Hi everyone, it's Darlene. I'm back with another card video. Today's card is for the October White Space Challenge. I'm going to be using the Sprinkles of Life set by Stampin' Up! And some translucent embossing paste. So this is clear. And then also I'm using the Mama Elephant Femme frames. The outside frame of this set is perfectly proportioned for an A2 card, so it just cuts off a little bit on each edge and gives you a nice finished pretty scalloped edge. So I'm going to stamp my cupcake. I'm using a Misty, but you really don't need to because it's a clear stamp so you can see right through it. But I'm going to stamp it with some Memento Tuxedo black ink because I'm going to be using Copic markers on it. And then I'm going to grab a Post-it and I'm going to stamp it. Since I already know where it's going on my cardstock, I'm just going to put the Post-it on top, ink up my stamp again, and then stamp it on the Post-it. I'm just doing this so that I can create a mask. You can also use masking tape. I just grabbed the Post-it because it was right there on my desk. So now I'm doing the top, and I'm also going to be creating the mask out of the top as well so that I can cover my whole cupcake. And you can see I'm placing these stamps right on the sticky part of my Post-it. So once I get that all stamped, I'm going to cut these masks out of my Post-it and I'll place them on top of this stamped image. And that way it's all masked and I can do the background. So what I want to do is I want to create a table for this cupcake to sit on. I'm going to cover, create an edge right there and put the Post-it, a nice clean Post-it on it. And then I'm going to grab some pumice stone distress ink. I find that the distress inks are some of the easier inks to blend like this with an applicator. And what I'm doing here is I'm priming my applicator, my sponge dauber, with some ink. And what this does is it sort of gets a nice even coverage of your applicator so that when the ink gets to the cardstock you don't have chunks of it or different areas that are heavier or lighter. And then you'll notice that I start coloring on the Post-it and then I move toward the cardstock. And I unload quite a bit of ink before I start coloring my cardstock. And that's so that I get a little tiny bit of ink that will be much easier for me to spread out. And so you can see I'm making it a little bit darker on the edge of the image, and then I'm kind of fading it out as I get out toward away from the image. And now I'm going to work on what's above the tabletop, which is going to be a tumbled glass. And so I just reversed my Post-it to cover what I've already done. And I'm doing the same exact priming here. I really like tumbled glass for light colored backgrounds because it's such a faded, really pretty light blue. So you don't have to worry about getting too dark on your cardstock. And I'm doing the same thing here, but as I noticed, I was doing the tumbled glass, I noticed that some of the pumice stone was getting into my tumbled glass, and that's because the distress ink stays wet for longer, and so that Post-it was still wet from the pumice stone. So I just got a fresh Post-it and I carried on with my tumbled glass. So I'm going to do heavy near the image and then fade it out as I move outward. And you'll see once I take the mask off that there's a nice pretty edge where both of the colors meet. And now it's time for my sentiment, because I don't want to move too far with this card before I do the sentiment, just in case I mess it up and then I haven't done too much work. So I decided to use my Misty, and I used the grid sheet to make sure that it was straight, and I stamped it with some VersaFine black onyx ink. And it came out good, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to go ahead and take that Post-it off, and it's funny how you don't realize how much ink you have on the cardstock until you see the white image that's revealed under the mask. And I'm just going to color the bottom portion of this cupcake, and I'm doing it really simply, just two colors, E43 and E44. I'm going to color the darkest areas first, the E44, which is going to be right underneath the frosting, and then on the left edge, a little bit on the right edge, and then on the bottom. And then I'm just going to fill in with the E43. And then I'm going to go back in with that E44, and when you put another layer of color, it adds just a little bit more darkness to that color. So just a little bit more shadow where the frosting is overhanging the cupcake. Now it's time for the embossing paste. So I'm using Cracked Pistachio ink. It's a brand new ink pad by Tim Holtz, and so it's really juicy. And then I'll take some of my paste and put it on my craft mat. This is a Ranger craft mat, and I'm going to pick it up with the bottom of my palette knife. I just find that that's the easiest way to do it. I'm just trying to figure out how much I need. I don't want to use too much or too little, so I put a little bit back, and then I ended up putting more on. But this embossing paste, the translucent, is actually quite a bit gooier than the regular white embossing paste. But you can still color it, it works just fine. So I grabbed some, I stuck it in my pool of ink and just mix it around. You can tell it's a little gooey when you see the texture of it here. And I ended up adding a little bit more color because I wanted it to be darker. And once I get it all mixed up, then it's ready to apply. And notice that it is translucent, but it's white while it's wet, which is good because then you can see exactly where it's going. So I'm going to pick it up, and it's easiest again to pick it up with the bottom of the palette knife and spread it out with the bottom of the knife. So I'm going to pick up a little bit at a time, and I'm just going to place it on the top of my cupcake, and I'm going to kind of push it to the edge. Now when this dries, it's going to be clear, so I didn't want to go over the black edges. There's really no point in it because then it looks like it's shiny over the black outline of your image. So just right up to the black outline. And now I've got that all done. I can show it to you here. It's really thick and you can't see through it at all, but it's still green. And I was interested to see how much green showed up after it dried. Now I decided to add a little bit of sparkle. I got some glass glitter by Stampin' Up, and you can use any glitter. You can use thin glitter, you can use beads, micro beads if you want, you can use sequins, and I just pinched some and I sprinkled it on top. And what this is going to do is it's going to stick into your embossing paste when it dries, and so it'll be a permanent part of your embossing paste. Now I'm going to pick it up and show you up close so you can see how much. It's not too much. You don't want too much sparkle because you want to be able to see what's underneath there. Okay, so now I'm going to clear my table and I'm going to let this dry. So I'm going to zoom in on it, and then I went back to it a few hours later, and you can see when it dries that you can now see the image underneath, which I thought was pretty cool. And you can see the color and the sparkles, and so everything is there. So just something a little bit different. To finish the card off, because this is about white space, so I'm not going to add anything else, I'm just going to take some foam tape and I'm going to put a few pieces on here, remove the backing, and then I'll center it on a card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch. And it's nice to have this scalloped edge, so it creates a little bit of interest without changing the color or creating a matte. It's just a nice pretty edge to look at, so it's not just plain straight. Anyway, so that is the card for today. I'm looking forward to see what you guys come up with for the White Space Challenge, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.